Anyway, all right, so just double checking I started recording. Yes. So today we're basically doing 2 days of revision. I do weird revision in this class. I know other classes possibly put up the list of every single thing we've covered in the class, and we kind of go through that. I used to do that, but I kind of always considered it a complete waste of my time. You guys are perfectly capable of pulling up all the slides and looking at them. I have a million quizzes this year. So instead, I started doing case studies. So something that requires all of the knowledge you've gathered in the class to actually understand what happened. Because most of the time when we talk about attacks, we talk about them as these small events. A buffer overflow happened. Or the examples I pull up are attacks where it's a singular failure. That is very rare, actually. Real attacks are normally multiple cases of failure. And real attacks are usually trying to understand the system and then tweak it a little so it just doesn't work the way you expected it to. The attacks I have picked here, we have 3 of them. I think I have them on the prior. Mouse failure again. Why is the mouse failing? Nope. Okay, I'm just going to end this presentation and we're going to do this again because I don't know what's wrong. The 3 attacks I have picked, and these are not in correct order, are Verizon Supercookie, Lenovo Superfish, and Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica was massive news, well, maybe not recently anymore. All 3 of these are textbook examples, and I have selected them because they all ended up in a public investigation state, and some of them ended up in litigation. This means that we have a lot of public information about them. If you go onto your favorite AI chatbot, it probably knows a lot of information about these. I will not swear that it's accurate. I never do, but it has a good amount of data to pull from. They also touch on a whole pile of topics for this course. So we're going to go through them. Last year's exam featured Verizon Supercookie and Lenovo Superfish. I have not had time to sit down with RTAs and decide if that will or will not happen this year, but if it does, I will explicitly tell you over a week in advance. Cambridge Analytica was added new this year because the other 2 don't cover access control particularly well. Raise your hands if you've ever heard the words Cambridge Analytica before entering this room. Oh my goodness, is this small? Wow, okay. I realized I was in the United Kingdom when this happened, and this was horrendously investigated in the United Kingdom. But this involves Canada. This is a Canadian company, in part. It's kind of complicated. I'll get there. All right. Then this will be news. This is actually a major scandal that caused massive shifts in how legal issues are handled in several countries. And it caused massive shifts in how we think about harm to the general public. This case really touches on access control, where we're going to spend most of our time on this case. But it's also a massive issue of privacy, consent, and law. This caused massive shifts, again, in the UK. I think the US, I looked it up this morning and I could not find a public statement so the US looked into this, but Canada looked into this as well, so we're looking at the Canadian variant of this. Also, I think that the UK, which was under GDPR at the time, probably did a much more depth analysis than the FTC. This is about micro-targeting. What do you know about micro-targeting? Has anyone ever heard of the concept of micro-targeting yet? You guys are staring at, dear goodness. Online safety, people. Protect your brains. Behavioral advertising has come up a couple times in this class. Micro-targeting is a variant, or behavioral advertising is a type of micro-targeting. The idea is that instead of sending an ad out to everyone, I send it to just you, because just you are interested in this specific thing. So the idea is that I take a message, and it does not necessarily need to be an ad. It could be any message, and I deliver it directly to a singular person. And I don't necessarily deliver it to everyone. Now, I want you to think about how this works with political campaigns. So maybe I know you care about puppies and you're really concerned about war. What do? I talk to you about puppies and I talk to you about war, and I do not mention them in the opposite directions. Now, I've picked two radically different concepts, but let's pick on housing for a moment. If I make more housing affordable, what's going to happen? The value of everyone's houses is going to drop. If you're 60-something and you own a house, the last thing you want is your house costs to go down. If you're 20-something and desperately trying to get a house, the thing you desperately want is all the house costs to go down. So what do? I decide who's 20 and I tell them about, we're doing affordable housing. Everyone's house prices, it'll be so much easier to get this. I talk to the older generation and I don't mention it. Or if I do mention it, I mention it in terms of their grandchildren. I change my message depending upon my audience.
Is this just normal marketing nowadays?
It kind of is, but we're talking about a radical kind of shift in our understanding of it that happened around 2012. All these cases are dated and old, I'm sorry. The newer ones, I haven't bothered to learn enough. And they require court cases, take years sometimes. This is sort of normal. Okay, the front one asks a good question about normalcy of this. And this is a hard question to answer because if you're in the United States, what I'm describing is completely normal. If you're in Germany, you're describing something terrifying. Different cultures take this very differently, and different laws in different countries allow this at radically different levels. But at the point that this occurred, we did not realize just how much damage it could do. Because in your opinion, do you pay attention to ads? No, this generation totally ignores ads. You're completely convinced that ad has no impact on you. You're wrong. It does have an impact on you. But you don't consider that, so you don't see it as a threat. So this is called micro-targeting. I have Obama up here because normally I pick on Trump. And this is the story of Trump, admittedly, again. But Obama was one of the first US presidents to really use micro-targeting. They had apps out where you walked up to someone's front door and it told you whether this was a Republican, a Democrat, and what their key concerns were as far as they could tell. They extensively use this. And as much as I make fun of Trump, Obama is, from a security perspective, in some ways, really terrifying, some of the decisions that happened out of that group. But they are less public, and they take more nuances to understand. This is one of them. He did extensive micro-targeting. And notice this date, 2012? Anyway. The idea here is that I want to tell, and this is a story of voting, so I want to tell each voter what they want to hear, and I don't want to tell everybody the same message. The goal is to actually tell every person something different and to target something they care about. I tell them how much I'm going to solve it. But in order to do this, I need data. I need data on users, and I need to know what they care about. How am I going to get that data? This is a research paper from, I realize 2013, but this is a whole research path that's been covered. This particular paper found that easily accessible digital records, aka Facebook likes, can be used to automatically and accurately predict a range of highly sensitive personal attributes, including sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, political views, personality traits, intelligence, happiness, use of addictive substances, parental separation, age, gender. Oh my goodness. Basically, if I can just see what web pages you like, I can predict a lot about you, even if you never like a single web page of this type. I've seen a lot of research. I've done some research of this research myself. Yes, this is very true. I can go into why, but it doesn't really matter for this. So the idea behind Cambridge Analytica, if data from a large number of people could be obtained, we could figure out their political views, and then we could start micro-targeting this, and we could sell it as a business. Because if you're a political person, you're not necessarily good at technology. So let's spin up a business that supports campaigns. And the idea here is to really do a lot of this, to support door-to-door, to support online advertisements. This focuses very much on online advertisements. Cambridge Analytica was used during the 2016 U.S. political, during the U.S. Basically Trump. They helped elect Trump the first time. It was also used during the UK Brexit referendum. So Brexit is when the United Kingdom decided to separate from the European Union. History, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it does not matter, other than this was an important vote. And it really upset the British public that they didn't possibly make this decision themselves, and that this may have been influenced through things like this. Note that actually we have no proof that this was used during the UK Brexit. It was feared that it was used, and the whole reason we have a lot of investigation is because they were convinced that this had happened, and this was a devastating impact to the UK economy. EU Leave was proved not to have done this. UKIP threw a huge legal fit, and I can't find the outcome of it. But basically, we don't know. UKIP may have been using this, but it was definitely used in the US presidential election. All right, that's the background behind Cambridge Analytica. Now let's go talk about Facebook. So Facebook had discovered this thing called social gaming. You know, you used to sit there on your own computer and game with yourself. Maybe you could go online and play Counter-Strike and kind of shoot at each other. But let's be blunt, at the time anyway, young males played that. You know who the biggest market is for spending? Females. And women like to connect with other people. They also have a tendency to not sit down for 6 hours and smash through a game. They have a tendency to play solitaire or other games that are kind of micro time. And so there's a lot of research around this time about how do we convert games that are these massive online money makers into something that can be done in 5 minutes at a time. And the textbook example of this is Farmville. I couldn't weirdly find a picture of Farmville's like lost cow, so I had the AI produce one. This is close enough. But if you were on Facebook at this point in time, you probably had a whole feed filled with lost sheep and lost cows and God knows what. This is the evidence of social gaming. Facebook really wanted to enable social gaming. The whole point of social gaming, though, is that you are interacting with your friends via this app, this game, which is not necessarily running on Facebook servers. Okay. So Facebook set up this thing called Graph API. Again, this is a Copilot generated thing just to give you the idea. But the idea here is that you have maybe Alice, and Alice is friends with Bob. This is a Graph API, so the idea here is that Alice is connected to a whole bunch of facts about her. Not just these, but a bunch. Bob is also connected to Bob's photos, Bob's likes, Bob's pages, Bob's posts. Bob may also be connected to, say, Alice's photos that Bob has been tagged in. So there's also tags, for example. There's a lot of data, and it's all done off of this Graph API. Facebook really wants to enable social gaming. So I think I'm probably, okay. So they came up with this thing called the Graph API version 1. We're talking about version 1 here. This is very important. So the idea is that Alice installs an app, let's call it foobar. Alice consents to foobar accessing things like likes and photos and friends. Foobar is given an access token. Now we're starting to get into our own topics for this class. And foobar, on behalf of Alice, accesses the authorized content. So here's some examples of different queries you could run. And along the bottom is the URL you would use. Long ago, I used to actually have the equivalent of an activity in which you could explore the Facebook graph for yourself and a couple friends. Again, I really couldn't find any of that data this morning, so I relied on ChatGPT to tell me what this looked like because I couldn't find any examples, but this does look like what I remember it. The key being that you could just literally dump a URL in like this and put me, friends, question mark, and often you didn't even need an access token if you're dealing with public data. And it would just dump out a full list of friends. I'm going to stop here. You are a Facebook engineer. You really want to allow other people to do this. How do I set up access control on this? So there's a token. There's an access control token that's being sent. How do I manage who can access what? So who should be able to access what here? So again, this is a review lecture. So I want you to think about what we learned in access control. You're an engineer. How would you set up access control for this system? Privacy is a thing, but we care about it less in 2012. This predates 2012. Sorry, pre 2012, we do not care about privacy as much as we do now, but we do still care about it. And Facebook has lost lawsuits about privacy at this stage. So, just talk to your neighbor. We're going to spend 2-3 minutes we're doing the default 3 minutes, but if I think this is going well, I may let it run longer. This is a revision lecture. We're not trying to cover content at the same rate as we do normally. Do you guys feel like you need a moment to think, or can I just release you to talk to your neighbor? All right, let's just go talk to our neighbors. How would you set this up access control-wise?
How would you? You know.
You have to.
Oh, yeah. You somehow. I mean, it's a lot actually. It's a small too actually when recording actually matters. Most people will be watching the video actually a lot.
I don't do standard review lectures. Okay. There's a lot of data here that's not on here on the slides because I spend a lot of time trying to understand Cambridge Analytica and reading various posts and stuff about it. So the heart of it is basically just the friends did not consent. And that because of this, you're able to collect all of the data. Is this legal? Smartwatches, we still have them. The courts came down as no, and they did for a couple reasons. So first off, the interfaces, which I cannot find, never mentioned friends. So you can't really hide behind the assumption that someone has actually legally done this when you haven't even told them they're supposed to. Generally, unfair and deceptive practices out of the US and similar approaches in other countries do require that if something is not something you would expect, then it really can't just hide in the terms of service. The other big thing is this violated Facebook's terms of service. Facebook's terms of service for developers, there's a lot of developers in this room. How many of you have actually read the terms of service associated with the APIs that you are using? Keep this in mind. Explicitly banned collecting data in this fashion and storing it long term. Did Facebook check that? Version 1, no. Version 2 of the Graph API, they actually did start instigating certain checks. But in version 1, they never made any effort to enforce their own policy. And this gets a bit different across legal zones. But sometimes it's seen that if no effort was ever made to enforce a policy, that it's just there for tick boxing purposes and it may not actually be as admissible in court. And that was a case here. And so the fact that Facebook never made any attempt to enforce this policy at all, this is a big point of open debate, but the Cambridge Analytica people may or may not have been good friends with some of the people inside of Facebook. And so Facebook was quite aware of what they were doing. There's another really fascinating point to this class. Right? I've been picking on Graph API version 1, and I've been very careful to say version 1 the whole time. At the time of this scandal, Facebook had already determined this was a bad idea, and it created Graph API version 2. Version 2 changed the access control model. It started including the app. So it changed the rules. It basically said, if you want to access a friend's data, that friend must also have the app installed. So now instead of the subject action object, it had an additional check. It said, okay, the subject is now a combination of the user and the app. And the object must be associated with a user that has this app. And this closed a lot of the issues. And this was version 2. Cambridge Analytica, so this is normal software development. Usually we close off an API version, but we leave it running for about a year while everyone converts over to the new API. That means all new apps were automatically put on version 2. Cambridge Analytica came online during that year. It was automatically put on version 2. But in version 2, it couldn't collect this data. So it started emailing researchers. And it found one at the University of Cambridge that had a pre-existing app that had access to version 1 that had been doing personality tests for research purposes. They brought him on board. They converted the app completely over, did a full makeover on this thing, changed the terms of service and everything, basically gutted it, and then used his version 1 access to do this, which means that they explicitly circumvented the policy that Facebook had in place that was supposed to have protected people. Canada comes into this, because if you look into this, you discover that actually this was investigated by the United Kingdom and British Columbia. Wow, that sounds weird, because if you remember back on the earlier slide, it was the US and UK being hit by this, and to my knowledge, it was not Canada. Cambridge Analytica has a sub-company, I forget the name of the sub-company, but it's based out of British Columbia. Which means that since the company was based out of British Columbia and data was being processed in British Columbia, it fell under Canadian law. And under Canadian law, the official view is that this is not acceptable behavior under Canadian rules. Also, odds are that 87 million had Canadian citizens in it. Pick your favorite country, it probably had it in it. This impacts campaigns. We know this works. This is the whole story behind data brokers. Okay, where are we on time? Okay, yeah, this is the official view from the from Canada. Canada does not consider this to be consent. Okay. This is Cambridge Analytica. Hopefully this was a massive crash course in access control. I will not finish it, but we're going to start Lenovo Superfish. I think it's Lenovo. Did I pick Lenovo? Yes, Lenovo. All right. Any other questions with Cambridge Analytica before I brought that up, actually?
Why is it called Cambridge Analytica?
It was spun out of Cambridge, UK. They're originally based in Cambridge, UK.
It's such a coincidence that I find research at Cambridge University as well.
Cambridge University is a hotbed for computer science research. It is very well known, and it does a lot of integration with companies. It is not a surprise to me at all they managed to find somebody that does this. In fact, if you dug around the campus here, you would probably find a set of researchers that do this. And researchers, when they do this, they write these nice research paper things and drop their emails on them. All right. Cambridge Analytica is a story of access control. We're actually moving further back in time, I think. I forget when Superfish happened, but it was, I think, pre-2012. It's just such a textbook case. How many people have heard of this one? Okay, a couple. I was expecting Cambridge Analytica. Most people to have heard of it, and almost no one to have heard of this one. This one touches on a lot of this course, which is why I picked it. It talks on man-in-middle attacks, cryptography, certificate authorities, access control, trust, law, in terms of man-in-middle legally acceptable, and law versus consent. Oh, okay. I remember a point I was meant to make on Cambridge Analytica. I do not have a good access answer for this, but if an API lets you do something, does that make it legal? Yeah. Think about that one for a little bit.
No.
This is an ongoing debate in the law. It depends a lot on context.
Wouldn't there be two things to it? One is the API itself compliant with applicable regional laws? And number two is the way that you're using the API. So it'd be two-leveled.
I pose this because I see a lot of developers go, oh, the API let me get this, it must be fine. And the short answer is the terms of service also matter. And it is possible for you to physically access something that you are not supposed to be accessing and then doing something else with it. And this is a long point of debate in security, because what do security people do? We go access something usually via an API we weren't supposed to access. Is that legal? It's a bit complicated. Anyway.
Well, if the Amazon S3 bucket of someone else's is exposed by a public API, you can't go access it. It's all legal.
Okay, so we're talking about privacy here to some degree, which means purpose.
Understood.
Broadly speaking, if you access it and then go do responsible disclosure, which is tell the company that this is up there, usually you're not on the wrong side of the law for that behavior. So simply accessing it alone is usually not a problem. It's when you do something with it. Okay, Lenovo. Security researcher Mark Rogers wrote that This attack is quite possibly the single worst thing I've ever seen a manufacturer do to its own customer base. I cannot overstate how evil this is. The Lenovo Superfish is a straight-up man-in-the-middle attack. Straight up, it's a man-in-the-middle attack. There's a picture of a man-in-the-middle attack there, in case you don't know what one is anymore. But there's a couple of really interesting cases points to it, because this works on HTTPS.
Oh my god.
So what happened is Lenovo shipped a piece of software called Superfish on all of its home user computers. It explicitly did not do this to corporate customers, which is an interesting point here. That injected man-in-the-middle attacks onto all network traffic. I'm going to present this slide, and then I'm going to turn us over to discussion, because everything you need to understand this attack is on this slide. It gets worse than this slide, but using the information from this course, you should be able to understand what this means. They pre-installed Superfish, the program's technical visual discovery. Superfish man-in-the-middle all traffic and added advertising. Superfish/Nova pre-installed a single self-signed root certificate on the computers, and they used the same root certificate with a weak key on all affected Lenovo PCs. All right, talk to your neighbor. What can you do with this? Why is this so bad? Why is the front row staring at me in horror? All right, you only have a few minutes. I'll probably let this run for like maybe 7-8 minutes, and then we'll come back together, and I'll go into how bad it is on Tuesday.
There's something that recently popped up to this.
This is horrible. I hate this. Why do I know? I mean, it's Lenovo, it's bad, but why?
It's actually worse than on this slide, so the worst will come on Tuesday. All right, so first off, the advertising part of this is a red herring in American speak. It's irrelevant. There's so many other things that dump advertising. That's not what makes this famous at all. This is a man-in-the-middle attack. The way they man-in-the-middle attack it is they use a root certificate. Hopefully you remember what root certificates are. I think I have one in a couple slides that I'm just going to skip forward until I please put. Here's the root certificate. Here's Waterloo. This certificate, when you go onto Waterloo, you can see that it's been verified by Certainly. And if you pull the certificate chain, Waterloo is verified by Certainly Intermediate and verified by Starfield Root Certificate Authority. That last one, Starfield Root Certificate Authority, where is that stored? Locally on your computer. Your browser or your operating system has picked through divine something or other the set of certificate authorities your browser or operating system will trust. Most computers concatenate them. So they take the browser ones and the operating system ones, they concatenate them together, and if anything on that list signs it, it's considered to be accurate and true. Remember, we went and talked about the case of, what's her name? Adrienne Porter Felt, who was on an airplane, and she saw that GoGo was man-in-the-middle and everything. Same attack. The difference is that attack was happening in the network. This attack is happening inside the laptop. So the software inside the laptop took a certificate, dropped it on the operating system list. Now the browser, the operating system, anything sent. So we're low on the OSI network stack here, right? Like we're talking the operating system level. So the operating system will now trust anything signed by that certificate. So now it's possible to man-in-the-middle anything. Same attack as what we saw with Adrienne Porter Felt. Any request that comes out, it intercepts it midway. It strips out the encryption. It sees a request, it basically creates a connection between the browser and that piece of software and the piece of software and the final internet. So it's man-in-the-middling the attack. And it is signing it with its own certificate authority powers to send it up to that main server. Okay, this is the point where a good chunk of the class managed to hit this point. Why is it worse than this?
Anyone can do this now. Because anyone can sign certificate.
The last line. Okay. The last line. They use the same root certificate for every Lenovo computer. All right, in order to use a certificate, what is the certificate got in it? The contents of the certificate. What's in the certificate things?
The public key.
Public key. But if I want to go and actually but what's that public key paired with? A private key. If I want to go and sign and say, I am really Microsoft, what do I need in order to sign somebody else's certificate? I need the private key. Where does the private key have to be stored? On the local computer. It has some minor protections. I'll get into this later, but they were not good. This means now every single computer that's in Lenovo is running the same public-private key pair, and every single computer that's a Lenovo has the certificate authority sitting in the root. And how many people have the private key associated with that certificate authority?
Everyone.
Every single Lenovo user, and then once this broke, pretty much everyone on the planet. All right, how does man-in-the-middle certificate authorities work? Now, the original, are we out of time? Okay, I'm going to make a quick statement. I'll stop, and we'll cover the rest Tuesday. The original attack happens here, but once this broke and everyone got the private key, the resulting attack can happen at any of these 3 points. And now every single person on the internet is able to claim to a Lenovo user that they are any website. I will talk about that on Tuesday. Tuesday, not Monday, Tuesday.
Ah, yes, capitalism. Oh, love capitalism.